Hello, you're welcome to The Point of View. The Point of View is your favorite current affairs program on television. On The Point of View, we pick the right question, we pick the right topic, we get the right guest and ask relevant questions. And we say that after each episode, we leave you with very useful insights. My name is Selorm Adonoo, sitting in for your regular host, Bernard Avler. You can join the discussion via our WhatsApp line 055 0585832, 055 0585832. Tonight, the IMF is in town. Indeed, they've been in town since Monday, and we understand that they are undertaking what we call the debt sustainability analysis. And we also understand that debt sustainability is a prerequisite for any program that the IMF will want to have with any country, and Ghana for that matter. What is debt sustainability analysis? What does it entail? We understand that as part of that, debt sustainability drive, there could possibly be debt restructuring. What does that mean? The famous so-called haircut. We will try and delve into that and understand what that means for your investments in bonds, etc., in the country. Are we really on the right path with the IMF? My guest will help us appreciate that. Well, we'll take a quick break. Return. I will introduce my guest and we'll get a discussion started. Don't worry. Welcome back to The Point of View. You can join the discussion on 055 0585832. Tonight, we're looking at Ghana's economy and the IMF. What should we expect? Ghana is angling to have a program with the IMF. But before that, we need to do what we call debt sustainability analysis. And that is why the IMF team has been in town since Monday, and they will be in town till sometime next week. My guests on the program tonight are Toma, Imirhe, a financial journalist. Toma, you're welcome.
Thank you, Selorm.
And Joe Jackson, financial analyst and director of operations for Dealers Financial Services. Joe, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be on your platform today.
It's a pleasure. All right. So today, the finance minister addressed the press on a number of things just to bring Ghanaians up to speed with what the IMF has been doing in Ghana, and he talks about the kind of program we intend to have. He says that we are almost done with the packaging of the program, and he says our program will be anchored on 7 pillars. Let's listen to what he had to say at that press conference. We'll be right back. All right, so he mentioned a number of things that we will be doing. So he mentioned 7 pillars, that the program will deal with debt sustainability, fiscal consolidation, strengthening monetary and exchange rate policy, building strong financial institutions, what he calls the macro-critical structural reforms, and also maintaining peace and security. And then the final pillar is economic growth and transformation. If you have that clip now, let's see it.
The IMF negotiations. The formal negotiations for a fund-supported program began on Monday, September 26, 2022, and discussions are advancing smoothly. The IMF mission will cover a period of 10 days, and in line of His Excellency the President's dialogue with the IMF Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva, negotiations will be fast-tracked to ensure that key aspects of the program are reflected in the 2023 annual budget statement in November 2022. Government is committed to ensuring that a comprehensive package is negotiated with the aim of restoring and sustaining macroeconomic stability, ensuring durable and inclusive growth, and promoting social protection. Therefore, the IMF, World Bank, and the Ghana team are currently undertaking a debt sustainability analysis to inform the program negotiations. In addition, the IMF and government team are working to update the medium-term macro-fiscal framework to inform IMF program design. Also, the government team and the IMF team are discussing policy measures and structural reforms proposed in an economic program aimed at addressing the economic challenges facing the country. We simply have not reached any agreement with the fund on the parameters of any debt operation, as we are in the process of completing the debt sustainability analysis. Government shall continue to actively engage all stakeholders in a clear and transparent manner as we seek to fast-track the IMF negotiation process. Ghana needs a viable domestic financial system to support its development program. especially in these 3 years with limited access to international capital markets. Therefore, everything must and will be done to protect our financial sector. And there must be room for a win-win conversation through extensive stakeholder engagement with both our domestic and external investors. Ghana has always had a collaborative approach with its partners, and we shall, I'm confident, come out of an historic arrangement. I think the issue of the timing is that, you know, we've seen countries like Zambia, rightly you have mentioned, gone through a 2-year negotiation by getting into the common framework. And really, I don't think we as a country can afford that type of uncertainty over the period. And why are we hopeful that that will be different? Because in the discussions that I had with the managing director of the IMF, those were the specific issues that we talked about, how to fast track this so that we will get into organizing ourselves a lot better. But more importantly was the meeting between His Excellency the President and the Managing Director of the IMF in Rotterdam. And it was very, very clear in terms of the commitment that the fund showed. And she did say that they were determined to reach an agreement by end of the year, and that they've started constructive discussions with us. The team is here, and they are here on a mission, but as the mission chief told us, this is not a mission of 10 days. It is a mission through the end of the year. So there's increased economic.
All right, so that was Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta speaking earlier today at a press conference in Accra to bring Ghanaians up to speed on what the IMF has been in town doing, mainly conducting the DSC, debt sustainability analysis. Toma, let me start with you. The IMF is in town. They've started official engagement with government. Are we on the right path? The finance minister appears very optimistic. He says he's hopeful that by December we will have a program. And indeed, he says, you know, budgetary projections will be made even based on the facility government is expecting from the IMF. Are we being too optimistic? Are we on the right path?
Selorm, first of all, it's not a matter of whether we're on the right path or not. We're on the only path that is left to us. We don't have any more options. And not only do we not have any other path apart from the IMF,
the right path, as in, are we proceeding properly? Early days yet, but are we proceeding properly?
Bottom line is this: the faster we come to an agreement, the more chance we have of surviving this crisis. And we're under pressure from external parties as well. You notice that Fitch downgraded us, last Friday? The last working day before the negotiations with the IMF started. That was not a coincidence. That was to put pressure on government and give the IMF a stronger negotiating
So will it then be fair to say that then it means the international bodies are conspiring against Ghana? Would that be fair to
Let me put it this way. They are conspiring to make sure that Ghana pays back the money is owed to the external people, their people.
I see.
I mean, that was why the IMF was set up in the first place. It's the Bretton Woods institution. The idea of the IMF is to make sure that everybody has enough balance of payments, is in a balance of payments position that ensures that it meets their external obligations. So in Ghana's case, the IMF is coming in to make sure that eventually our debts are paid. Even though they might be rescheduled, some people might take a haircut, but at least they will come out relatively better than the economy collapsing and we have to now default on all our debts. That's what the IMF is about.
So is a December deadline or target the minister is looking at feasible, given the circumstances?
I think it is, in terms of the fact the government knows how weak its negotiating position is. So on many things, he will just give in and blame the IMF to the citizenry that, look, the IMF is insisting on this, IMF is insisting on that. I know the IMF is never afraid to be portrayed as the villain.
Yes.
So the villain, the IMF won't mind. Yeah, we are the ones that said they should cut off this program, cut off that program, and cut off that expenditure. They don't care. So, oh yes. In fact, a program will be largely in place by the time they are delivering the 2023 budget in November.
The program will be set
will
by...
be largely have the major things will have been settled.
I see. Let me go to Joe on the line. Joe, who is Director of Finance at Daylight Financial Services. It appears to me that the financial sector, financial services sector, will have some good things coming their way in the negotiation or in the package, especially as Kenneth Urata appears to be basing the package on one of the key pillars of the package. It says will be building strong financial institution. But Joe, do you think that we are being too optimistic, expecting that by December would have had a program in place?
Okay, good evening once more. Listen, first of all, let me correct something you said. There are no goodies coming for the financial sector. Not just because he said there's a pillar of financial stability, so there are goodies coming in the financial sector. And I'll go into that a lot more as we move along. But listen, the situation is dire. The situation is grim. We are this close to a default. And so we don't have a choice. Remember, the IMF initially said they will come in Q1 of 2023. They are here Q3 of 2022.
I see.
We know the situation is dire. We know we don't have a choice. Is the target timeline aggressive? Very aggressive. But is there any choice? No. Once the target timeline was given by the Minister of Finance, that sent a certain indication, says that, listen, we will do what it takes. And this is what he said. We will do what it takes. The IMF is with us to get an agreement in place in the shortest possible time.
I see.
That's what
so
I'm cautiously optimistic that the timeline can be achieved.
I see. That's good to hear. Ken actually also says that the program is almost set. The domestic program we are going to the IMF with is almost set. Stakeholders have been consulted. Stakeholders will be consulted again. And he appears to have, not that he appears, like you said, there's no option. Debt sustainability is a very important part of this. In terms of debt sustainability, what can we be doing? Debt restructuring, raising revenue. In terms of debt restructuring, what can we be doing? And how should even domestic investors be feeling ahead of this? Mind you, there's been some discussions that, some domestic, bondholders, for example, could suffer some haircuts. I don't know how that comes to you as a player in the financial sector. Let's deal with that first. What will the debt restructuring entail?
Okay, now first let's talk about debt sustainability. Debt sustainability just says that, listen, I lift up my hands. I can't pay my debt. And so I've gone to the IMF to say, can you stand behind me? Give me some credibility so that I can negotiate with the people I owe that I cannot pay. That negotiation will involve possibly three things. I can't pay, so give me a little bit more time. That's extending the time. I can't pay, so reduce the interest. Or I can't pay, so forgive me some of the debt, give me a discount on some of the debt, or take a haircut, as we call it. Or where still some combination of all these three things. Now, we've gone to the IMF and literally we've gone to our big sister Georgieva and to say, Sister Georgieva, can you stand behind us as we negotiate so that they will take us serious? Now, it's very simple. She says, can I have a full and complete reckoning of how much you owe? so that I can judge, that I can give you some amount of money that will help settle this situation. That's what is the debt sustainability analysis. And already we knew from clear issues that we couldn't go on this way. If you take 2 lines of our expenditure, salaries, 55%, servicing of debt, 50%, is already over 100%. Something has to give. So they're saying, start with your own house cleaning. Your people must suffer some of the pain. Your people must share in the pain. And remember that amidst all this, the Minister of Finance was quite clear. He says there's going to be a 5-member committee set up. And that 5-member committee is going to negotiate the framework for this, what they call domestic debt restructuring, which is a fancy term to say, hey, I can't pay you, so let's come to some agreement as to how you take a haircut or you reduce interest or extend the period so that I can pay you. That's what is going to happen. So, please, let everybody be clear. There will be some pain. We've heard indications that maybe the smaller holders, those who are holding treasury bills, the pensioners, they may get off lightly. I don't know. All I know is that some of our banks have significant holdings of government paper. What is significant? If you're holding over 40% of all your loan assets in government paper, then you have a problem. We've heard of institutions that it goes as high as 50 and even as high as 60%. Those institutions have a problem because a significant part of their what they call their assets, what they own, is going to be wiped off of the books. Some of them will have shock absorbers to take that hit. Some may just simply not have shock absorbers. And so when the Minister of Finance talks about stability, he's merely saying to you that in the negotiation, one of the things that we will bear in mind is not to create a situation where there is instability in my financial sector. That means that there's going to be pain, but we've got to look at the pain and balance it against the general health of the financial sector. Let nobody call that goodies.
It's interesting you talk about the banks and those who are likely to be affected. Just looking at the 7 pillars that the finance minister spoke to us today as constituting the domestic blueprint for engaging the IMF, he mentioned building strong financial institutions. So how does debt forgiveness, or for lack of a better word, haircutting the financial institutions give us a strong financial institution or sector?
I'm not sure I know how.
I know.
Giving me a haircut and wiping off assets of my my balance sheet, putting me into trouble, gives me a stronger institution. Because it is a strange world we live in now, where we are saying that if you bought government paper, you are not safe anymore, and that you may lose money. That's a sad, sad world we live in. And the worst part of it is that this will do damage to the government's own ability to raise money locally. So that's why this whole agreement must be reached in time. But as for building a stronger institution by giving me a haircut, I'm not sure. You build a stronger institution by making sure my capital is up to scratch, my governance is good, you regulate me better, I'm managing my risk. But giving me a haircut definitely is not going to make me stronger. I see Toma is raising his hand.
Yes, Toma says you don't have that answer. He says he does. So let me hear what he
Joe, let
what
me
he
tell
has
you,
to say.
see the whole idea. What the finance minister basically was saying today is that after all the money we've spent on financial sector reforms to save people's deposits, we cannot risk a haircut that will put the existence of those same financial institutions in jeopardy. Basically, what he's telling us is that that from his side, they are going to minimize the haircut that the local financial institutions will suffer. But now here's the thing. That in itself is a good idea. But we are back to the same old conflict of interest. These people, the minister and the deputy who are in the negotiating team, have vested interest in these things. They are beneficial owners of institutions that have a lot of government debt on their own balance sheets. So now the question that's going to come is how much of protecting local domestic financial institutions is based on what is good for the financial institutions and what is good for the Ghanaian economy, and how much of it is good for their own personal financial stake in those institutions. That question has already been raised. That are we not sure now that we overprotect domestic financial institutions in giving them a haircut because some people who are taking the decisions have an interest in what happens there? But because the other side of it is this. So I said this on Big Issue on Saturday. When we are giving those haircuts, remember something. Over the past God knows how many years, these same domestic financial institutions have made an absolute killing of Ghana's borrowing. Absolute insane profitability. See how it works. We say that we are offering, like, let's take 5-year bonds. You offer 5-year bonds to people at 19% because the foreign investors are taking the exchange rate risk, and you need to cover their risk. So you now offer 19%. Now it turns out that the cedi depreciation is 4% in a year, and I'll come to that why it is 4%, which means that in dollar terms they are making 15%. In the home jurisdiction, the US, at that time they were getting what, 1.75%. Ghana's paying 15%. Now you can understand why our government kept saying that there's a strong appetite for Ghanaian debt, because we are paying 10 times what other people are paying.
Way more than they get in their own
Okay,
country.
now the reason why they were getting that was that, you see, when you do that, now the foreign investors come and clean out this abnormally high interest yields they are going to get in dollars. So they bring in money. When they bring in so much money, what do? You put part of it on and build up your foreign reserves to record highs of over $10 billion. Then you put the rest on the market so that everybody is able to get forex whenever they need it. So now you have a stable cedi and high cedi interest rates, which means that the high dollar yields are attractive to everybody. So more people bring in their money. So now you use the money coming in today to pay off the debts which are maturing tomorrow. Yes. Borrow from Peter, pay Paul. That's what's supposed to be happening. Now, you're paying 15% interest rates, effectively, dollar interest rates, which is more than 1.5 times the highest interest rates we ever paid on Eurobonds. The highest we ever paid on Eurobonds was 10.25. But you're paying 15% on your so-called domestic cedi debt. In dollar terms, you're paying 15%. Meanwhile, you're not expanding your forex revenues. In the past, when was the last time you opened a new oil field? When was the last time you opened a new mine? And you are paying 15% per annum on this thing. How would you run into the forex? Because what we have now really is not, we call it a fiscal consolidation crisis. No, it is a forex crisis. And how would you run into the forex crisis when you're doing that?
I see you in your elements. Toma is heated up, but we need to take a quick break.
Joe, am I lying?
And Joe will have to leave us, but I'll take a final comment from you, Joe, before you leave. So we'll take a quick break, return, and we'll look at whether this haircut is going to be a punk. And Toma, you don't have any hair at all to be cut. I don't know about Joe Jackson.
Joe doesn't have any either.
We'll return and then deal with those other issues. Don't go away. You're welcome back to Point of View. We're looking at the Ghana IMF interaction. And the IMF is in town conducting what we call the debt sustainability analysis, and what brought us here and then what we're likely to get. The finance minister says Ghana is almost ready with a program. Ghana is still engaging with stakeholders, and he's optimistic that by December we will have a program. And indeed, a lot of the projections in the 2023 budget to be read in November will be based on that domestic program we will be engaging the IMF with. He also says that he hopes Ghana comes of this in a win-win fashion. If you are debt distressed like Ghana and the IMF is upon you, or you've gone to the IMF to ask for help, and your creditors are upon you, how do you come out of this in a win-win fashion? Let Joe Jackson help us. Joe, how do we win in this? The IMF, yes, maybe, but how do we come out on a win-win level?
Well, I'm not sure about a win-win level. I think what would really happen would be that I would look at the possibility of my losing all my money and say, what is the next best alternative? And so sit down with the Ghanaian government and say, rather than what you go into default and everything go completely south, let's do a negotiation so that I can recover some of the money I put in. If you choose to call that one a win-win, that's okay. But whatever happens, those who have given Ghana money, be it in dollars, be it in cedis, are going and have an agreement, a piece of paper that they are holding on agreement, are going to lose money. The thing is, if you look at it, that if I allow them to default, could lose everything. If I work with them, I could get some back. Then maybe, just maybe, you can call it a win-win situation.
But you paint a very grim picture. I will not be too hard on government. Government says that where we are is as a result of the COVID-19 difficulties coupled with the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Truly, there's been some impact felt by the economy from those two ends. Indeed, Dr. Baumia, who chairs the economic management team, calls it a quadruple whammy. He even adds the energy sector contract to it, and even the financial sector cleanup. You know, this is a government that was doing quite well before it got hit by COVID, and now the Russian-Ukraine crisis. You know, it appears that the position we are in was quite inevitable, given all the external factors that have played against Ghana.
First of all, Toma explained how we're doing quite well. We were funding our lifestyles. We were broke. That we've said over and over again. And we're funding our lifestyle through these foreign inflows. But look at the table you're sitting on now. Look at my size. If I stood on the chair and stood at the edge of the table, what would you guys say? Big joke, Charlie, come down or you will fall. If after standing at the edge and everybody saying, come off it, you're too close to the edge, you're too close to the edge, Toma wakes up and tips me over and I fall. Did Toma cause me to fall? Yes. But one needs to ask a question. Then why were you at your size, at your age, with all your issues, standing at the edge of the table? Why couldn't you step back so that if somebody tipped you, you wouldn't fall over? I end my response.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe Jackson. We appreciate your time and the way you put it. Thank you so much, Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson is a financial analyst. He is Director of Operations for Dealers Financial Services. Thank you so much. Let's welcome Dr. Adu Sarkodie, who is an economist and also with the University of Ghana. Doc, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody.
Yes, Toma is in the studio. We just finished speaking to your other colleague, Joe Jackson. Before I come back to Toma, debt sustainability analysis and all of that, what do you make of the finance minister's presser and some of the points he raised today?
Well, the finance minister wanted to calm the market, calm nerves, because many people have raised questions about what government is doing. I particularly asked this question when the finance minister read the mid-year budget, that where is the program that you're going to present to the IMF? So sort of wanted to let us know the dire situation and what government is doing to avert the whole situation, and then the outlook for the foreseeable future. But of course, the major issue on the table is the IMF program. And before any economy can get an IMF program like ours, you need, first of all, to assess your debt. Because currently, the fiscal position and the debt of this country, they have been in the worst position. It's also the reason for the downgrading. And when you talk about the debt, first people would look at the debt to GDP ratio, which I am not, a fan of, because somebody will say it is not a GDP that we use to service our debt; it is a revenue. So fair enough, you can look at the debt GDP ratio, but beyond that, I'll consider the debt revenue ratio. I also consider the debt service to revenue ratio. Again, I'll consider the external debt to export ratio. Then you look at the composition of the debt, which is public debt, the domestic debt versus external debt. Which percentage of the debt is in the external, level, and then which of it is in the domestic level? Even within the domestic debt, there are, as a part of it, like 30% or so held by foreigners. So it is a domestic debt, all right, but it looks like it behaves like a foreign debt. And then you look at also which part of the debt is concessional, which of it is, syndicated. And again, I have read some report that close to about 25 to 30% of the debt is only in it's bilateral. The remaining 70% are all from the capital market, and it is difficult, to deal with the debt when you have 70% of it coming from the capital market, because in the capital market, there's no mercy for the crippled. They are there to make money. They are there to make, profit. So you go to borrow from them, you must pay. So I have given you this narration or scenario to let you know why it is needed to address the debt first before the IMF, negotiations can kickstart. And so we look at all this scenario, the indicators, the debt revenue ratio, the debt service revenue ratio, the external debt exports ratio, the composition of the debt, whether it's domestic, external, whether it's concessional or non-concessional, all these things are important to analyze and see where it's just like you've gone to a hospital and you are sick and the doctor wants to diagnose the sickness. So now they want to first diagnose the debt because it is also the reason why you have been downgraded, that Ghana is unable to pay, its debt, to service its debt. And therefore, the international investors have, decided not to give loans to the government of Ghana. And so a huge situation is a big problem that this economy is facing, coupled with the exchange rates, coupled with the inflation rate so high. GDP growth has slowed down. Unemployment rate has risen from 13.4% to 13.9% in the second quarter of 2022. So many things are getting out of hand. And it's sad to say, as a Ghanaian, it's sad to say, that I have been contacted by foreigners because they might have read my articles and they emailed me asking me what is happening to Ghana. It's sad to see the economy in this scenario, in this situation. But there is hope that it is possible to get out of this. And the first point of contact is the IMF. And I'm happy that the government has decided to seek help from the IMF so that from that point going, they can bring the economy back on track. What every Ghanaian, every banker, every journalist, those of us who are lecturers, students, what everybody is looking for is to bring the economy back on track so that when we go to the market, we can afford the prices of the goods that we go to buy, so that when we invest, we can get our returns, so that when we grow the economy, we can create jobs, so that lecturers can receive their salaries and their COLA and all that,
And lecturers will stop threatening that from next week they will lay down their tools. That one you have to ask UTAG.
Yes. Don't ask me.
Yes. But very important point.
I will repeat the lines for any comment I make.
Of course. Very interesting points you made about the external debt and the fact that the capital markets, no mercy for the crippled, etc. So if government now goes to them and seeks to renegotiate or seeks to restructure the debt in a way, ask for debt forgiveness, so-called haircut, can they refuse? And if they refuse, what can happen? Of course, we know in the case of the domestic, government may pass a law to twist the arms, as it were, of the domestic, players, and they will have to comply. I'm not sure government can do same with the externals. What can government do and what can happen?
First of all, let's look at the composition. About 51% of the debt is an external, component. And I have been told that the Eurobond has reached 15 billion. So you have 15 billion, and then about 20-something billion is in a. So you have about 400 billion cedis, which is the total debt. About 51% will give you about 200 and something billion cedis. Then you use the exchange rate. You're talking about some 20 to 22 billion dollars, and then 15% of that is from the 15 billion of that is from the euro bond, and then of course we have the bilateral and the other syndicated loans. So the negotiations will come from all angles. So first, left to me alone, I think the first people that we should deal with is the bilateral loans, because it's quite easy, because they understand issues. That's why it was easy for us to get the HIPIC relief, because once you talk to them, these countries are likely to forgive us our debt or give us a haircut or understand our situation. So at least from the start, you have been able to deal with 30% of your debt. Then you go to the remaining 70%. You mentioned that there's a component of it from the domestic debt, yes, and a component of that from the external. The external, investors, some of them may agree, some of them may not. But as a whole, I think the government will be able, especially with the backing of the IMF. And that is why Toma said that the essence of establishing the Bretton Woods institution was to give credibility to economies that are in difficulty. So, yes, the capital market is shut to us. Maybe investors are not convinced that we can service our debt, so that even if you go to the existing ones, they may say, no, we are not ready to renegotiate with you. But with the IMF backing, I think they will have hope in this economy and they'll be willing to renegotiate with us. We need their help. Other than that, we are doomed. So I'm sure the IMF, with the program, even World Bank will come on board to support us. AFDB is there, or other, multilateral organizations are there to help revive the economy. So with the coming on board of the third party, which is the third parties, I should say, are the IMF and the World Bank and the other organizations, it is likely they will listen and they'll be willing to renegotiate things with us, give us favorable terms. All we are asking for is favorable terms. It's just like you owe somebody and then you promise the person to pay at the end of the year at a certain interest rate. And then you know that by your situations, you are not able to pay the loan as prescribed at the time that you told the person that you repay. So if you go to the person to beg him that, please, I told you that I promised that I will pay by the end of the year, but looking at the situations, I may not be able to pay my debt at the end of the year. And I have Mr. Koyo or Mr. Kwesi, who is also coming to give a certain witness. And we know that that man is rich. So even if you default, that rich man can help. So with the backing of that rich man, your creditor may listen to your story and help you. So we are asking for favorable terms, like, examples like, reducing interest rate or deferring the payment of interest rate, the interest, or deferring the amortization. If some of the loans are due maybe this year to repay, we can ask them to give us a grace period, like say 6 months, 1 year, and then we come back to pay. So it is very likely that with the coming on board of the IMF, World Bank, and other organizations, they are likely to listen to us, and then we need that. I am very optimistic that the government can, be serious and disciplined, and with the IMF program, we can come out of this problem. It is not a good sign at all. We need to revive the Ghanaian economy, and I think that let us give hope to Ghanaians. Let's give hope to the foreigners that things can be better than we see now.
I see. Doc, so I will take a quick break. I'll return to Toma and you again to look at what commitment government must show in its own dealings. Was it March or April this year, government announced some expenditure cutting measures. We want to see how government has fared, in those, and see how it can do if we eventually get the facility with the IMF. And should government actually touch any of its flagship programs by way of, cutting expenditure? We'll look at all of those when we return from this break. Don't go away. You're welcome back to The Point of View. We've been looking at Ghana's 17th engagement with the IMF. My panelist, Dr. Adu Sarkodie, is making some interesting points. So has Toma, Imirhe, financial journalist, and Joe Jackson. We've dealt with the issue of the so-called haircut debt forgiveness, what the debt sustainability analysis will entail. Now I want to look at what government's own commitment to its program should be. Government often tells us to tighten our belt. Government tells us that they will do this. In the end, it doesn't really turn out to be so. In March this year, the finance minister gave a statement on the economy. That's when the whole issue about the e-levy was raging, and he mentioned a number of things he called expenditure cutting measures. First, he said there was going to be discretionary spending, cut in discretionary spending by some 10%, and that the finance ministry was at the time meeting with MDAs to review their spending plans for the rest of the 3 quarters of the year, etc. And that the Times called for efficient use of energy resources, and so in line with that, there will be 50% cut in fuel coupon allocations to all political appointees. Also, government was going to impose an immediate moratorium on the purchase of imported vehicles for the rest of the year, and also government was going to impose a moratorium on all foreign travels except pre-approved critical or statutory travels, and a number of other things. He also said that government or cabinet has approved that ministers and heads of SOEs contribute some 30% of their salaries from April to December to the consolidated fund, and they thank the Council of State for taking the lead in that respect. We don't know how these have fared. We don't know whether new cars, 4x4s, etc., have been imported or brought into the country since then by government. We don't know what the status of that 30% cut in salaries of public sector, government appointees has been. We don't know what the 10% cut in discretionary spending has been. We don't know the status. Unfortunately, the finance minister did not give us any update in respect of that today. Toma, how confident are you that should we get a program, government is going to play its part and not derail again?
Well, the thing is that the people at the top in government will have to rein in their people. Let's be very clear about this thing. The afflictions today are not peculiar to this government. It's been on since we got to the hippie completion point and had our debts written off, and our debt to GDP ratio went down to under 30% during the Kufuor era. Every government since then has been complicit in this thing. Although admittedly this government has taken it to new levels, but it's all been the same direction. Now, see the thing. I keep saying that this problem we have right now is more a forex problem than a CD problem. I always say, the worst comes to worst, you can print CDs to pay your debt. You can't print dollars. You have a dollar problem. Now, fine. The finance minister today actually explained that we are doing better in terms of fiscal consolidation now than the projections in the original budget before we started to do the expenditure cuts. So we're actually a bit better off now, which means it's working. But the issue is this. Of that savings you have made, how much forex savings have you made? Then just look at one simple example. GMPC Gensa. $1.5 billion dollars being lost because we have decided to sell gas to some company.
But government says that
price.
report is not accurate.
Well, I mean, until we see the figures Imani and ASEP have come up with, government has said it's not true, but they have not given us alternative figures. The only figures we've seen are their figures. And until I see alternative figures, I'll tend to believe what these guys are saying. Now, that is 1.4. That is not central government. That's GNPC. $1.5 billion. So it's like you are saving. If you have a situation where you are saving $10 here and have $20 leakage there, how does it help you? You see, it's not just a matter of commitment from central government. Central government has to make sure that all its organs do the right things as well. You see, sometimes we tend to blame the politicians and all that, but look at the Auditor General's report. Look at the leakages there. Those are civil servants. Those are leakages from civil servants.
Very well.
So it's a combined thing. Even we on the street, me and you who are talking, we're adding to this problem. Ghana has made a merchandise trade surplus every single quarter since the last quarter of 2016. And that was largely because of the, converting, changing from diesel to gas when it comes to energy generation. Okay? But we've made a trade every single quarter. So why should our currency be depreciating at this heavy rate? Because of our capital account problems.
Very well.
We need to, what I'm trying to say is that the capital account problems are already there, which means that, but we have the potential to even improve our merchandise trade surplus even further in order to bridge the shortfalls in our capital account. For example, eat golden tree chocolate rather than Belgian chocolate and things like that. But we love our foreign imported things.
I mean, the private sector will import those into the country and all of that. And you can't.
India, they allow them to import things, but go and see what Indians drive in India. They all drive Tata.
Yes, but I'm just in 30 seconds. What do you expect to happen to government's flagship programs, free SHS, Planting for Freedom?
Some will have to go. At least some will have to go to some extent. For example, senior high school, just as I won for the beginning. What is a government that hasn't a public debt to GDP ratio?
Government has been determined to keep it the way it is.
Why? Look, your public debt to GDP ratio is 80%. You are using 54% of your tax revenues on debt servicing, and you are paying the school fees of a senior manager in Tulu oil company whose kid is attending at Chimota School. Doesn't make any sense.
Right. So let me come to Dr. Sarkodie. When I listen to the finance minister mention the 7 pillars, the 6th pillar actually struck me. It says maintaining peace and security. These are all financial matters he's talking about, their sustainability, fiscal consolidation, monetary and exchange, etc. But he mentioned maintaining peace and security. How important is this in the scheme of things? Just in 1 minute.
Yes, because you want investors to come to your country, and investors will not come into a country full of instability. So we need peace and stability to make sure that investments grow in the economy and even the local business. Because you and I cannot even go out to have a program on TV when there's disturbances on the street or elsewhere. So it is important to make sure that the investment, that whatever investment that a country will get, will grow and yield results. Now that's very key to maintaining economic growth, sustainable economic growth. Because I have always been told that the shape of economics always is taken from the shape of politics and the social structure. So when the politics and the social structure are right, economics will be right.
Very well. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarkodie, Adu Sarkodie, economist and senior lecturer with the University of Ghana. Toma and Imirhe, financial journalist. Thanks so much as always. And thanks to Joe Jackson, who also joined us earlier. So this is how we conclude our program for today. But what is important is that the finance minister has been trying to encourage us. And he says that we should always remember that the battle is always being for the Lord. And then we shouldn't be afraid, or we shouldn't fear, because the Lord is with us. He ended his statement today by quoting from Genesis chapter 11 verse 5, that if the people speaking one language have been able to do this, then there shall be nothing impossible to them. So if Ghanaians will agree to speak one language in respect of the difficulty, and nothing shall be impossible to us. This is our show. This has been our show tonight. My name is Selorm Adonoo. See you some other time. Keep watching Citi TV.
The Point of View is brought to you by Cowbell Coffee. Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it. Kel Charcoal Toothpaste. Kel Charcoal. Happy smile.